Welcome back to NUIC Football, joined by Joe Merdian. I am your host, Kyle Kampmier. Jay Doyle couldn't make it tonight, but we're going to bring you an exclusive 8-man only podcast tonight to talk about what happened in Week 9, but more importantly, take a look ahead to what we have coming up in Round 1 of these I8FA playoffs. Joe, it's going to be an exciting time. Obviously, the playoff bracket kind of went almost to par to what we had. There were a couple games that kind of changed the trajectory of that 16 seed, which we said was going to be where the biggest issue was. The rest of it pretty much went status quo, but there were a couple things that did happen. One of those being another upset game that also led to what we had for the 16 seed, but then changed the projection on another team. And obviously that is one of the games that you have listed as one of your biggest impact games from Week 9. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Yeah, so, Kyle, there wasn't any surprises on Friday night or even the Thursday night game when Metro East beat Oblong. All those Friday night games went according to plan, but kicked off Saturday morning at 11 with Unity and MCP. And Unity Christian pulled the upset over MCP. They were one of 5 teams that had a chance to make the playoffs to get that 16 seed spot starting the day on Saturday. 5 teams. First thing they had to do was win. So they pull the upset on MCP. But while that was happening, Make Meridian, they beat St. Thomas More, so Make Meridian stayed alive. Well, and then it came down to that Orangeville Abundant Life game, Kyle. So, and who would have thought, right? In Orangeville, little did they probably know at the time they were playing, and even if they won, they weren't not going to get in the playoffs. Unity Christian had 1 more point. But with Orangeville losing to Abundant Life, that knocked them out. That left Unity Christian and Make Meridian the top 2 teams at 4 and 5. Make Meridian, even with less playoff points, so gets in ahead of Unity Christian because of the head-to-head, the first tiebreaker in the 8-man playoff system. Kyle, you and I have talked about it on air, off air. We love that the head-to-head is the ultimate tiebreaker, as it makes sense. It should be. And Make Meridian, congratulations to them. The chips fell all right into place for them on Saturday, and their first year in 8-man, they nabbed that 16 seed.
Yeah, so what you're saying is by the time Orangeville took the field to get ready to warm up, that Unity Christian game with MCP was coming to an end. So at that time, they had no idea that Unity Christian was getting ready to pull off an upset. That win or lose for Orangeville changed the entire trajectory that they had going into that playoff picture, because had Unity Christian lost, as was projected, Orangeville, had they won, would have secured that 16th seed. But because Unity Christian pulled that upset out, it came down to a 3-way tie for that final spot at 4 and 5, of which they have to throw the head-to-head out, which me and you had a long conversation about, and it makes sense. You got 3 teams all tied at 4 and 5, and you got to go off of playoff points in that moment, because had, hypothetically, they all finished at 4 and 5, Unity Christian with 49 points would have been bumped by
Unity would have
Meridian,
gotten in
who had 45 points, and Orangeville, had they won, would have been sitting with 48 points.
Right.
And you can't take a team with 45 points, bump them ahead of a team that has 48 points. Likewise, you can't really take a team with 48 points in the middle and knock them out because this other team jumped over them.
Right. But with Orangeville losing, that knocked them out. So,
and then it goes back to that head-to-head tiebreaker.
Yeah. So
crazy change of events.
Yeah, Kyle. I don't know if people realize there was 5 teams I'll say with a legit shot to get that 16 seed starting the day on Saturday. So, for it to end up being Make Meridian, congratulations to them. And, tough end of the season there for Orangeville, obviously. And obviously a tough end for Unity Christian, pulling that upset and still missing out. So it was a deal, Kyle, where, Unity Christian is cheering for Orangeville and Make Meridian is cheering for Abundant Life, in that situation, that last game. And Orangeville's just
Right.
out there playing, having probably no idea what the effect their outcome was going to have on those two teams at that time.
No, I mean, we had talked about it. I mean, we even went as far as having, or at least I did, the final projections having Orangeville in the playoff mix.
Right.
And we initially had it as Unity Christian here not too long ago. At least I did, because I felt like they were moving in the right trajectory. Then they got hit with the injury bug that kind of changed that trajectory. But then at the end of the day, Orangeville messed up the game where they had a 14-0 lead in anyway, so it all was for naught anyhow.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, what an effort by Unity Christian, first and foremost, going out by beating a playoff team and being that close to being in the playoffs themselves. And looking at Meridian, you go back to probably week 2 or 3 on our episode, me and you had that discussion right here that Meridian could be a team that we see coming down the road and making the playoffs. And here they are.
Yeah, no doubt. And a credit to them also. I talked about this on our podcast earlier in the week on the Spotlight podcast. Make Meridian started 1-5. Granted, with their schedule, I think everyone probably expected that. But for them to rally the troops there, so to speak, and win their last 3 and stay in contention, that can't be easy for a team to stay level-headed, even with that schedule, knowing you still got some very winnable games coming up. That can be hard to do, get kids to stay focused in that situation. And,
right.
So again, shout out to them. So, Kyle, there's also some interesting things that happened with MCP losing that game. That dropped them to 6-3, and gave them the same amount of points, playoff points, as FCW. So FCW and MCP had a coin flip for that 12 and 13 seed. So that also changed that trajectory, that seeding there a little bit from what we had projected, obviously, over the course of the last few weeks. I mean, I think we both had MCP. I think I may have had them finishing 8-1 at one point. They lost that game to St. Anne, still had them projected at 7-2. But I don't think you or I had them projected to lose to Unity at any point.
No, you're right. Earlier in, I started putting out my projections going into week 6. So right when week 5 concluded is when I started doing projections, and I stated that I would wait until that week because honestly, it just makes things a little bit easier to track from that point forward anyway. And you already start knocking off your automatic qualifiers in the process because you don't have to worry about them. They're already in. And with that, yeah, I did have MCP at 8-1 at one point, and then I had them at 7-2 with St. Anne at 8-1. I never had MCP at 6-3.
No, did not. And then, Kyle, the way it all shook out there with some results of some of these games too, ended up being a 3-way tie for that 9, 10, 11 seed between Alden Hebron, West Central, and Metro East Lutheran. All teams 7-2 and 35 playoff points. So for the first time ever, there was basically a blind draw. Well, that wasn't the first time ever there was a blind draw. You go back to the first year 8-man, they seeded the top, I think it was top 6 or top 8, and they just did a blind draw for the bottom few teams. That might have been the very first year. But anyways,
since 2019,
Yep, since 8-man has grown, and we went to the 16-team field here, there hasn't been a 3-way tie. So the president of I8FA, John Lawler, since his team was one of the teams in the three-way tie. He had an outside source to do the blind draw for those 9, 10, and 11 seeds. So I'm pretty sure the president will have that on the agenda for the first meeting. Like I had talked to him. He said there's probably a better way to do this. So they'll probably talk about it as a committee and come up with something different for the years to come. But you know, it is what it is, and it was a blind draw, and that's how it shook out. So
Yeah, I think you need
um,
to add in something like either to how many playoff teams you played on your schedule,
right,
or so you could do it in two different ways. So like IHSA, their second tiebreaker after playoff points is defeated opponents win. So the teams that you beat,
how many wins? Yes,
how many wins did they accumulate? If it's still a tie, then it goes to uh, teams that you played that made the playoffs.
okay, yeah.
And then you could take
I
it a
mean, I
step
think that
further
would
with
be a good.
you could take it a step further with which IHSA does not. But then you could take it a step further if it's still tied at the same amount of playoff teams, then you could take your playoff teams opponents wins or defeated playoff teams and go that route too.
Yeah,
So there's still another additional layers that you can add to it.
yeah, Kyle. I do know one thing. I know it was tossed around at the beginning when they were putting in some rules and that. It may even been a rule at one point early on in the I8FA, and I'm not for sure, so don't quote me on this. But when I talked to Coach Lauer, they had talked about one time doing defensive points allowed. And he said that will not be an option just because you don't want teams keeping their starters in or whatnot just to maybe try to gain a spot or two in the playoff ranking. So that will not be come into play. And again, I feel like maybe in the first year or something that was in there somewhere, but I can't remember. But nonetheless, it will be nothing like that because you don't want a situation, Kyle, where somebody's trying to run a score up or keep their starters in on defense to not allow a point when it's a running clock. Like that just doesn't make sense. So
Well, it
that
takes
will
the
not be
integrity of the game. To
right.
me, it affects the integrity of the game. The whole purpose of the
Right.
mercy rule clock is, you're basically conceding the game, still playing the game to its completion through entirety, but
Yep.
at that same time, you should be look a good program's looking to get additional players into the game to help build them up.
Right. Exactly. So,
So,
but all in all, Colin, and we'll look at the bracket here later, obviously. But I love how the bracket shakes out. You got some very good teams on both sides of this bracket. It should be a fun 3 or 4 weeks here on the way to Monmouth for sure.
yeah, I mean like you said, we'll touch on it later, but that's definitely a thing that a lot of the coaches repeated on our show
Yes.
was just that. Um, you know, the fact that no matter what part of the bracket you're in, whatever little quad you're in,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yep. For sure.
But let's take a look at our I8FA scores from around our area. And there they are. So right there, like you said, Abundant Life beat Orangeville on Saturday, 34-28. Milledgeville goes on the road, plays a top 10 ranked team in Missouri. North Shelby comes out with a 28-12 win, securing that number 1 seed. West Carroll beat Hiawatha 43-26. Olden Hebron Olsha beat AFC 26-8. River Ridge beat Christian Life 46-8. Polo beat South Beloit 70-42. And Amboy beat West Central almost to what we had predicted, 54-14. So that gives
Yeah.
you a look at that.
Yeah, Kyle, a couple things there. Amboy, they win the West Division title there with that win over West Central. And Milledgeville, that 28-12 victory over North Shelby. Kyle, I don't feel like I probably did justice on our spotlight show, or we even did justice on our playoff show because we're more focused on the playoffs. But that Milledgeville win, holding North Shelby to 12 points, not just beating North Shelby, But holding that team to 12 points, Kyle, that is a statement by the Milledgeville defense for sure. I mean, that was a very, very quality team they played, a team that pretty much like Milledgeville scores whatever they want to score almost every week. So that was a nice win there for the Missiles, but even more impressive what they got done on the defensive side of the football on Saturday.
Yeah, when we had Coach Roble on the playoff show, he had talked about their running back and how he reminded them a lot of Gunnar Lobdell from Orangeville back in the
Yes.
2021 season. That running back's name is Gannon Bowen for North Shelby. And the thing about him is I've already heard that he was probably even more physically imposing than what Lobdell was when he played.
Wow, that's a
He
statement.
said that I was told that this guy was very muscular. His shoulders had muscles on muscles. So obviously he had a very imposing stature on top of it, and arguably the best player that they've faced all season long. So that speaks volumes to them.
Yeah, shout out to Milledgeville for that great defensive effort on Saturday, and what a way for them to roll into the playoffs here for sure. So,
all right, so let's take a look at those final standings. And like you said, in the Northwest, there you go: Milledgeville 9-0, Polo 8-1, West Carroll 7-2, Orangeville 3-6, River Ridge 4-5, AFC finishes 2-7. If we take a look at the West Division, Amboy finishes 8-1, winning that West Division Conference title. West Central 7-2, FCW 6-3, Galva 5-4, Ridgewood 4-5, BPC, West Prairie, and Peoria Heights all at 1-8. In the Northeast, South Beloit finishes 7-2, along with Alden, Heber, and Olsha. Hiawatha 5-4, Christian Life 2-7, Harvest, Westminster Christian 0-9. The East Division, St. Anne is your conference champion. They are 8-1 overall. MCP 6-3, Meridian 4-5, Unity Christian 4-5, St. Thomas More 2-7, and Blue Ridge 1-8. And then in the South Division, South Fork wraps up their South Division Conference title. They are 9-0. Pawnee 8-1. Metro East Lutheran 7-2. Oblong 4-5. Martinsville 3-6. And Palestine Hudsonville 0-9. So that gives you a look at the I8FA final standings across the state in all 5 divisions. And one last little thing here. Their team did not move on, but despite that, we still have our I8FA Neff Paints Player of the Week to announce. And that's going to go to this guy right here, Orangeville's Hayden Schofield. It's hard to believe that it took until week 9 for him to be our I8FA Player of the Week. Finishes the season 29 attempts, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, picked up 1 reception and 60 yards plus a touchdown in that close loss to Abundant Life in a game at the time when they took the field was a win and get in style of game. He gave it everything they had. He also bumped Carson Wart out of the number 4 spot on the all-time rushing list to move into that spot, and now sits within 1,600 some yards of the all-time record held by your guy, Caden Drosty from West Central.
Yeah. You know, Kyle, I will say about Schofield, the player of the week here, I hope he can get fully recovered going into next season. He was kind of dinged up from week 1 here. I don't know if he had any weeks where he was fully healthy. I don't know if that truly was a thing or not, but hopefully he can be healthy next season. You know, you never see anybody get hurt, but you know, small school football, you gotta have your workhorse healthy, you know, to stay in the race. And
So
hopefully
just
next
to
year he can come in, stay healthy, and see where he ends up on the all-time rushing list.
Yeah, just so viewers know, since he no longer is playing this season, but in week 1 against Alden Hebron Olsha, he suffered a torn labrum in the first quarter of that game. So every game after that, every hit he took could potentially have led to a little bit more of a tear. And, you know, yeah, credit to the kid for dealing with that. It's not an easy injury to go through, because every time you land on it wrong, you get hit wrong, it just feels like a burning sensation. It's on fire. Your arm goes numb. Everything just feels like it's lighting up. And yeah, it takes some courage to do what he played through, especially considering it was a shoulder injury. And you know, all the hits he's taken on that shoulder throughout the course of the season, the amount of times he's been knocked down onto the
Right,
ground, landing on that shoulder. And then on top of that, he still played on defense too. And, you know, there were
right.
times where you overextend your arm incorrectly. It can also further exasperate the pain and or the injury. So that's one tough dude, man.
Yeah.
No doubt
Yeah, I
about
say
that.
you can't question his toughness. There's no question Schofield's toughness. So
uh yeah, it's in a day and age where a lot of people talk about how soft people are becoming. It's also great to hear about kids like this that definitely are
yeah,
tough and will continue to play through that kind of pain on a regular basis. And he's not the only one. So I'm not saying he's the
right.
only one, but it's very cool that he could have the season he did. One of the leading rushers across the state, and yeah, suffer the way he had to suffer while playing at the high level that we expected out of him all season long.
Yeah,
So anyway, congratulations to Hayden Schofield on our I8FA Neff Paints Player of the Week. We'll start taking a look at these playoff games when we return right after this. When it comes to concrete floors, don't settle for ordinary. Upgrade to extraordinary with Diedrich Epoxy. Whether it's your garage, basement, shop, or business, Diedrich Epoxy delivers durability, style, and a flawless finish built to last. Locally owned and trusted, they'll transform your space with professional epoxy flooring that stands up to whatever life throws at it. Take the first step today. Call Diedrich Epoxy at 815-239-1158 and bring strength and style to your floors. Need a fresh look? Look no further than Neff Paints, where quality meets craftsmanship. From gyms and locker rooms to living rooms and home projects, Neff Paints has you covered with top-tier products and expert service. Trusted by local pros and proud supporters of our area athletes, Neff Paints brings the durability, color, and finish that lasts. Ready to get started? Call Skylar at 815-541-7338 and take the first step toward your next transformation. Neff Paints, locally owned, community driven, quality you can see. All right, Joe, let's take a look at these playoffs. The first game we're talking about are the number 1 Milledgeville Missiles as they play host to the 16 seed, the Meridian Hawks. Meridian comes in with a 4-5 record. Milledgeville comes in perfect at 9-0. Last week, Milledgeville beat North Shelby out of Missouri 28-12, while Meridian beat St. Thomas More 48-14. The Hawks are making their first playoff appearance in their first season of 8-man football, so it's a great place to start, especially considering where they've been to. The once former Class 2A state runner-up all the way back in 1999 definitely fell on hard times and
yeah,
have changed the corner, went to 8-man football, and are now at least starting to change things around and they get a taste of playoffs again. So what a great opportunity for Meridian here.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the excitement for those kids, and starting Saturday, there was 5 teams that could get that last spot, and Macon Meridian was the team that got it. And Kyle, this is one of those deals where, obviously we're gonna be picking Milledgeville. Milledgeville's a heavy favorite in this one, number 1 seed. They've earned it. They're a big favorite. Macon Meridian comes into this game. Uh, Kyle, only 3 seniors on the roster of 26 or 27 kids, I believe, if Max Preps is correct. So this team, Kyle, is kind of those one of those up and coming team that you're gonna have your eyes on next year for sure when we start our previews. Um, but they do have their quarterback Bryce Brown, 1,660 yards, 22 touchdowns. I mean, they have been able to, move the ball some, score some points. But again, I think this is more of a learning experience for these kids. They'll remember the bus ride to and from Milledgeville. Playing at Floyd Dobb Field. But it's gonna be more about experience for these kids as they get ready for the next couple of years. Like I said, they're a very young team. And of course, Kyle, Milledgeville, they're that big one over Shelby. They're rolling into the playoffs here. You know, talked about their defense already. I don't know how much more we can talk about it. Carter Living Good at nose guard. Got Spencer Nye. You got Connor Johnson at corner, Evan Shank at corner. Caleb Sarber, he's I mean, you can't put the whole Milledgeville defense, Kyle, on the first team all conference team, can you?
No, you can't. But you could have a great argument.
Sure. That was not a knock against any other team, by the way. But man, you just start naming those guys, it's like, man, who do you leave off here? But anyways, obviously Kyle, like Milledgeville big in this one, like how they're rolling into the playoffs here after that big win. And we'll see what happens after this. But Milledgeville a heavy favorite in this one, and I don't think Cal will have to show a lot offensively either in this game.
No, I don't think so either. Obviously, the Missiles are making their 5th consecutive playoff appearance in I8FA. They were last year's state runner-up. The Missiles are 6-4 all-time in the I8FA playoffs. They've never missed the quarterfinal round, so they've always at least got through round 1. And like you said, they're favored by 58 points going into this game. It's I agree with you. I think that Milledgeville definitely have the ability to get up, get the scores in, don't have to show much on film,
Right.
and take care of business. And at the same time, Meridian, you get a nice trip up here to Milledgeville to Floyd Dobb Field.
Yeah.
A great environment for a playoff game. I already had a guy on X today messaging me saying he's excited to be able to cover the 8-man playoffs and come to Milledgeville. He's never been to Milledgeville. So that at least, that excitement is awesome to hear about and see, because 8-man football, I know it gets a lot of enigma around it because of, it's not real football, but we both know it's real football. It's still football, and it's a lot of fun. And to be quite honest, it's just so much fun to watch. It really is.
Yep. Yeah, Kyle, again, I like Milledgeville in this one, but it'd be fun with this Macon Meridian team to come up to Milledgeville, kind of see where you need to get to. When you had a young team like this, this will be a great experience for those young kids. I can't stress that enough for them, so,
Yep.
in Milledgeville, obviously, we all know what their goal is. So I assume they'll show up in business-like fashion with the job to do and get the job done and move on to the next round here.
Oh yeah, that will be the case. They don't want to go back to that quarterfinal monkey again.
No.
All right, let's take a look at the next location we're heading, and that is the Harbor in Amboy, where the 2-time defending state champs, the Clippers, enter as the 5 seed at 8-1, and they get to play host to the first ever state champions in Milford Cisna Park, who enters with the 12 seed at 6-3. Last week, MCP lost to Unity Christian 32-28. Amboy beat West Central 54-14. MCP is making their 7th consecutive trip to the playoffs. They won the state title in 2018, were the state runner-up in 2019. Since then, the playoffs haven't really been much of their favor. They've gone 6-5 all-time in the I8FA playoffs. On the other side of it, Amboy is making their 5th consecutive trip to the playoffs. The Clippers have never missed the semifinals in their time in 8-man football. Amboy is the back-to-back state champions. They were also the runner-up in 2022, so they're looking for their 4th consecutive trip to Monmouth. Amboy is a remarkable 13-2 all-time in the I8FA playoffs. Thoughts, Joe?
Yeah. No, I just want to throw one thing out there quick before we talk about this actual game, but you mentioned all those things. Well, one, Amboy, like Milledgeville, this will be an NUIC theme, Kyle, as we go through these previews. Amboy has never lost in the first round of the playoffs, similar to Milledgeville. So they're 4-0 in the first round of the I8FA playoffs. Also, Kyle, these two teams back, I believe it was in 22, the first year Amboy went to state and got that runner-up finish. Them and MCP had quite a game that year in the playoffs. I want to say Amboy was down 10 in the fourth quarter and won that game. I think that was the year, because I was on my way back from the Polo Ridgewood second round game. And I remember having this game on the radio and listening to it. And it was kind of fading in and out, but Amboy made a big comeback. I think they were down 10 starting the fourth.
You are correct.
MCP, then ended up beating St. Thomas more than in the semis, and then they went to state and lost to eventual champion West Central. But anyways, so these two teams have had a classic in the playoffs already. But Kyle, I look at MCP and I kind of like them all season long. But man, when they played the good teams, they gave up a lot of points and they gave up a lot of rushing yards. Boy, if there's one team that you don't want to be playing when you give up a lot of rushing yards, it's the Amboy Clippers. Kyle, it's just as much as I like MCP, what they've done, I love their quarterback, Dirks Newcomb. Just a bad matchup on paper here, I feel like, for the Bearcats.
Yeah. So I'm going to go right back to that 2022 playoff real quick, because it just brought some memories to my mind. So I originally had Amboy projected to win that first round game against Blue Ridge, along with MCP winning that first round game against AFC. I had MCP beating Amboy in that quarterfinal round. I had MCP beating St. Thomas More in that semifinal round. I had MCP as the team to face West Central for a state championship. And the only pick I got there was I had West Central picked to win state that year.
Yeah, MCP, I believe, was the 4 seed that year, I believe. So
yes, you were correct. Amboy was the 5 seed. 5 seed. Interesting.
Yep. So, but yeah, I remember that was a great game. I remember that. Listen to that, especially the end of it.
So going back to that playoff, so that was my second trip down to Monmouth, and I left Monmouth that night and jumped on a podcast with Greg Armstrong from View from the West, along with Mitch Stormer. And we were talking about this game, and I was sitting in a parking lot right across the street from Monmouth College's baseball field, having this podcast go on. And I left Monmouth that night stating that Amboy was going to be the team to beat the following year in 2023. And Amboy's been the team to beat every year since.
Yeah. Yes, they have. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was just interesting when you brought that up. It took me down memory lane, man.
Yeah, I remember that game for sure. Yeah, MCP, they've definitely been involved in some great playoff games over the years. They had a classic with Polo back in 21, the year Polo won state. in the quarterfinals. The Polo beat them 62-52 in a game that one point in the first half, MCP was up 12 and they're up 6 in the second half. So, but anyways, MCP, Coach Schwartz, no stranger to playoffs. For sure. They've been in there every year. But again, I worry about this MCP defense, Kyle, against these good run teams. You know, and Amboy, that's what they like to do is run the football. You got Lopez, Colt McCoy, Caden Heath. Of course, you got then that sets up that play action with the quarterback, Tanner Welch. Kyle, who Welch has not thrown an incompletion since week 6. Now,
I
granted,
know.
Amboy's only thrown the ball 10 times in that span, maybe even only 9. I can't remember the exact stats, but still, for a high school kid, that's pretty good, Kyle. I don't care who you are and who you're playing. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And he's making Cody win look like his brother Marcus win back in the day.
Yep. And Kyle, the other thing though is Amboy defense. What they've been doing, they have just been so tough to move the ball on. I mean, again, I've been a fan of the MCP quarterback Dirks Newcomb all season. He's had a great year. I mean, he's going to come into this game with 1,700 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, just and 3 interceptions, another 800 yards in the ground. If there is a weak spot, Kyle, in this Amboy defense, it might be defending the pass. But the problem is you got to give your quarterback time to throw the ball against that Amboy front 4. That's the problem. And I don't know if MCP has the guys to do that per se. Or, to do it consistently for 4 quarters, I should say.
Well, it's like you said, it's going to be tough when you're facing a pass rush and you got big old number 83 Evan Flanagan coming right at you.
Yeah.
Nonstop all game long. But what MCP does have, and I think Bob brought this up in your guys' show earlier this week, Mario Martinez is the second leading rusher on the team right behind Newcomb.
Right.
So he provides a little bit of a threat there. Obviously Skylar Estee is the leading receiver with 689 yards and 6 touchdowns on 30 receptions. Jace Comstock's definitely started to get more into play in that passing game as well. He has 20 receptions with 6 touchdowns for 374 yards. And then Martinez has another 11 receptions for 195 yards. The thing is here for Amboy, they just have, let's be honest, they have to neutralize Newcomb.
Yeah.
For MCP, they got to find a way to get Mario Martinez more integrated into that run game to take pressure off of Newcomb. And then, like you said, they got to be able to have the time to throw. So they have to get a little bit more creative, and they're going to have to get quicker at getting the pass game going in order to find a chance against the Clippers.
Right. And Kyle, I will say too, if you're Amboy, there is no quarterback as good as Dirks Newcomb in that West Division. No disrespect to anybody Amboy's played in that West Division, but this is by far the best quarterback they've seen since Kyson Francis in week 1, without a doubt. So, again, Amboy's defense has been playing really well, but this is by far, again, the best quarterback they've seen, since Francis in week 1. So I still think Amboy's up to the challenge. I still think they'll be able to get to Newcomb enough times. And again, I just don't know if MCP can stop that Amboy run game from cranking out first downs, 4, 5, 6 yards a carry. I just don't know if they can do it.
Well, I think I left my pick very well known on the playoff show.
Yeah.
as the Clippers were my pick to get back to the state championship game. Amboy's projected to win this game by 44 points, or they come in as I shouldn't say they're projected to win by 44 points. They come in as a 44-point favorite. I have not run projections yet, but they are a 44-point favorite coming in this game. So definitely going to be a tough road for MCP to get over. But again, enjoy the trip to the harbor. It's a fun place for a football game. Amboy, we've talked about it several times, how much of a football town they are. And regardless, it's going to be an exciting and fun environment.
Yep. I like Amboy big in this one also, Kyle.
All right, we'll return right after this. If you or your loved one has been injured, you need someone who will fight for you. Reese and Reese Injury Attorneys have been serving our community for over 40 years, standing up for people when they need it most. They know how to handle the insurance companies and get results, so you can focus on healing. Don't face it alone. Call Reese and Reese Injury Attorneys today at 815-968-8851 and let their experience work for you. Thinking about buying or selling a home? Trust the team that knows this area better than anyone. Best Realty. Whether you're looking for your first home, upgrading for more space, or relocating, Best Realty is committed to making the process smooth, honest, and successful. With deep roots in our local communities and a track record of results, Best Realty isn't just in the business of homes, they're in the business of helping families take the next step. Best Realty, local experts, real results, real people. Call today and move with confidence. Joey, get ahead to your stomping grounds as the number 3 Marcos come in at 8-1. They play host to the number 14 seed Hiawatha Hawks, who are 5-4. This is a rematch of Week 8, where Polo won this game 54-14. Last week, Hiawatha lost to West Carroll 43-26. Polo beat South Beloit 70-42. Kind of some weird scores there, I think,
Yes,
in
for
both
sure.
those games considerably.
For
But
sure.
the Hawks are making their 4th trip to the playoffs in I8FA. Unfortunately, the Hawks are also 0-3 in the playoffs, so they've never been able to get that first round win. And they're going on the road to a powerhouse in the Polo Marcos, who lost in the semifinals last season to Milledgeville 28-14. They lost in the semifinals for 3 consecutive seasons now. Polo has never missed the semifinals in their entire time in I8FA, and they've been to the state championship twice, winning those titles in both 2019 and 2021. The Marcos are making their 6th consecutive trip to the playoffs, and like Amboy, Polo has a very similar record. They're 13-3 all time in the I8FA playoffs.
Yeah, again, Kyle, as we talk about Amboy and Milledgeville, Polo's never lost a first-round playoff game either in the I8FA playoffs. So these two teams played 2 weeks ago in Week 8. Polo won 54-14, as you mentioned. Hiawatha just could not get anything going offensively against the Polo defense. The one big play they did have, Kyle, they spread everything out, and their quarterback, Aiden Cooper, was able to scamper up the middle for a 60-yard touchdown. So I look for Hiawatha, maybe try to do some more of that, because I just don't think they can run the ball out of a regular formation against the Marco defense. And I don't think they can give Cooper enough time to pass the ball either. So I maybe look for them to try some of that. Kyle, for Polo's me no secret what they're going to do. They're going to run the ball, and then they're going to run it some more. And then after that, they're going to run it some more. So no surprise there. As we will be, Kyle, by the way, Saturday's November 1st. What do you always say about November?
Run teams win in November, baby.
So, anyways, but yeah, I look for Polo to win this one big, Kyle. Home playoff game. Saturday afternoon, Polo will be a good crowd. Again, it's no disrespect to Hiawatha. I just didn't see anything that first time where they can maybe even try to gain an advantage against Polo. And really the only thing that stopped Polo at all in that game, the first quarter, Polo had 3 penalties and 2 turnovers, and they were still up 18-0 after the first quarter. So, I mean, it's just look for Polo big in this one. Experience these kids have in the playoffs. Yeah, like Polo big.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a story of truce here for Coach McPeak and the Hawks. Not stating that they're not going in the right direction, because clearly they've been to the playoffs 4 times.
Right.
At some point that you got to get there, and they've been doing that on a more consistent basis. But this season, they didn't have a single win against a playoff opponent. They have yet to beat a playoff team in the playoffs. And I don't think they have a lot of wins in I8FA against playoff teams.
Right.
So it's a
Right.
very consistent thing to where they're winning the lower level games to allow themselves to get to the playoffs, but they still have not been able to capture that signature win against a team that is actually going to the playoffs on a regular basis.
Well,
And
I
it
remember,
shows up in the end results.
yeah, and I remember Cal, when I was doing our season previews, I got an email from Coach McPeak, and he said the goal this year was to make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think he was being realistic.
Well,
5-4 is a good
that's
season for them. You
yeah,
know,
it is, and it is because,
it's
like
a
I
big
said,
deal to make the playoffs. I mean, it's
it
a
is.
big deal.
I mean, half the
So
teams are sitting at home this week.
right, exactly.
Um, so yes, it is a big deal, and likewise, you have to have goals, and not every team's goals are the same.
Right.
Hiawatha has achieved their goal. They're in the playoffs. And,
Yep.
you brought up Aiden Cooper. Tim Pruitt's been a workhorse for the Hawks as
Yes.
well.
Yep.
765 yards with 12 touchdowns on the ground on 76 carries. So he's averaging over 10 yards a carry. But like you said, Aiden Cooper carries a lot of load with him with 728 yards rushing, 578 yards through the air at just under or just over 50% completion rate. Touchdowns have been minimal, though. 6 touchdowns through the air, but he has 11 on the ground. So obviously they're getting a lot of their scores via the ground game. But yeah, Polo's a 35-point favorite coming into this game. We just saw this game
Yep.
happen 2 weeks ago. Polo had complete dominance. At
Yeah,
this point,
I think
it's one of those things where you got to go into the game and you got to give everything you have and try to slow it down as much as possible.
Yeah, I think Mercer Mumford had 4 or 5 touchdowns that game. JT Stevens had a couple more. So, same names for Paul as has been all year long. They're going to be riding those two guys, the quarterback and the tailback here throughout the playoffs. So, we'll see what happens here. But if you're Polo, just get the win on Saturday, stay healthy, and move on to the next round.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. My pick's Polo. All right, we're going to talk about our Prairie State Game of the Week when we return right after this. When it comes to planning for your future, you want someone you can trust. At Prairie State Investments, Mark Pfeiffer is here to help you build a plan that fits your life, your family, and your goals. Whether it's retirement, college savings, or investing wisely for tomorrow, Mark has the knowledge and local commitment to guide you every step of the way. Don't leave your future up to chance. Call Mark Pfeiffer at Prairie State Investments today at 815-668-8131 and start investing with confidence. Joe, our Prairie State 8-man game of the week takes us back to Mount Carroll, where the number 7 seed West Carroll Thunder enter with a 7-2 record. They are going to play host to the number 10 seed West Central Heat, who also enter with a 7-2 record. Last week, West Central lost to Amboy 54-14. West Carroll beat Hiawatha 43-26. Sounds like we just talked about 2 of those teams already.
Yep.
This this is a rematch of week 1 where West Carroll won this game 42-0. The Heat are making their second consecutive playoff appearance. They did win the 2022 state title. West Central is 6-2 all-time in the I8FA playoffs. On the other side of the ball, West Carroll is making their second consecutive playoff appearance in their second year in I8FA play. West Carroll is 1-1 in the I8FA playoffs. What's your opening thoughts on this game here, Joe?
Well, Kyle, it's funny. I think back to week 1. Remember how pumped up we were about this week 1 matchup, West Carroll at West Central? And
Yep.
that's where West Carroll just went down there and put the hammer down. I mean, just stomped them. But then West Central rattled off 7 wins in a row after that. until they lost to Amboy in week 9. Now, maybe not the competition that West Carroll played at certain points throughout the season, but nonetheless, Kyle, 7 wins is 7 wins, so obviously they found something there. Can you make up a 42-point difference? I'm not saying it's impossible. Um, you know, Coach Kirby would be one guy I'd pick to try to make up a 42-point difference if I was picking a list of I8FA coaches that can maybe pull that feat off.
Yeah, just throw the ball, just pitch it to the left and make a sharp turn to the right.
Yeah, they can do that too. I will say, Kyle, and I don't want to upset any of our faithful Milledgeville listeners because I know a lot of them listen. I'm not doing this but 2 years ago, Milledgeville beat Polo in the regular season by 38 points. And Polo won the playoff game. And I bring that up because, let's be honest, Kyle, not a lot of people thought that Polo even had a chance going into that game.
No, I was one of them.
You got to have the right game plan. You got to have the right kids. So, I mean, it's not impossible to overcome something like that.
No, it's not.
That game, of course, it did help Pole had a kid named Brock Salto. I mean, that does help when you have somebody that caliber. But you also have the right game plan, the kids with the right mindset. I still like West Carroll in this one. I don't think it's going to be 42-0. But we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I like how West Carroll's playing heading in here. Aiden Buckholz's getting a lot of touches. That defense is still getting it done. Race Mix, along with others on that defensive side of the ball. And of course, still got the 2 receivers, Bademiel and LeBourne, catching passes from Harrington. So I like how West Carroll can mix it up offensively. I haven't seen enough of West Central, Kyle, to really know for sure. I don't know. I think they can keep it a little bit close, but I still like West Carroll probably pulling away in the second half of this one.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I have not been able to catch a West Central game. Obviously they got Graham Kelly. He's been the signature player on their team. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get in contact with Coach Kirby either. Some of that might be on my own accord for failure of reaching out to him. But we did talk in the preseason, and like we had discussed at that time, this West Central team had to replace 6 players on the offensive side of the ball.
Right.
One of those starters that would have been returning is a senior this year that decided that they did not want to go out for football. They wanted to work. And, it's hard when you have to make a whole new team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because on the defensive side of the ball, he had a lot of returning players back. Right. Which when you have that many returning players back on defense and you have all that to replace on offense, clearly they were able to platoon guys in and out with some good depth. And this year it's been more of needing to play guys both ways. Like you said,
right.
They probably have not played the schedule at different points that West Carroll has. They have played at least one team of that same caliber that West Carroll has played in regards to the game that they just had to Amboy, and of course their own game against West Carroll back in week 1. But we've talked about it before. West Central did beat FCW, and FCW was a team that, we talked about it back when they lost to Polo. They were better than the 20-point loss that they had there. They gave Amboy fits, at least in the first half of that game, before Amboy pulled away in the second half to a 45-18 win there. So the fact that West Central was able to compete with an FCW that took 2 of the state powers and put them to a test says a lot about the heat, where they were
Right.
from week 1 to where they were later in the season when they did play FCW. And obviously here against Amboy, they just got steamrolled by a team that
Yeah.
we've talked about every week. They're just quietly taking care of business. Nobody's paying attention to them. Everybody
Right.
knows that they're ranked number 2 in state, but they're just kind of doing it quietly.
Yeah.
And I think some of that could go down to the competition level that they've played, because let's be honest, they don't have the strongest of schedules when you take a look at the Northwest
Right.
Division, the Northeast Division, and what the South Division has done this year. And the South Division, those teams have literally, I mean, the top 3 teams have taken it to the top teams in the East Division.
Right.
So clearly you can see that, and I'm not dismissing Amboy or the West Division, because I mean, hell, they've had our past 3 state champions have come out of that division.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the overall conglomerate of talent there has been down from what we've seen in recent years.
Right. Kyle, I'll tell you what, I will say this about West Carroll, the Thunder here going to these playoffs. I'm not trying to jump ahead here, but I feel like they're on a mission here, Kyle. You know, they've never beaten Polo or Milledgeville. That big loss to Polo last year in the second round. They feel like they got a pretty strong team. And they wouldn't see Polo possibly till the semis, and they wouldn't see Milledgeville or Amboy till state. I feel like West Carroll's coming in here on a mission. And now, granted, obviously they get to South Fork in round 2. That's a
That's
a
going to be
high
the
level
difference
team.
maker. That'll
But
be the
my
difference
point
maker.
is, Kyle, I just think the psyche of the team and the kids avoiding those other NUIC teams as long as they can is huge for the Thunder here in these playoffs. I really think it's huge for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Can West Carroll make a run of it to the semifinals? They're definitely a player that can. Do I have them picked to do that? No, I do not.
No.
I openly stated I got South Fork going to the state championship game, which
Right.
for South Fork to do that, they would have to pull off a couple upsets, one being West Carroll, one being Polo.
Right.
And that in itself would be a tough schedule for South Fork to get through all the same.
Right.
I agree, though. And you kind of got to watch what you say, because Coach S might be taking a look to see where that wand's still at, seeing if you got bugs around his office or not.
That was great. Classic. Oh, man.
But it's funny because we had I don't remember if you had talked about it on the Spotlight podcast, but I know we definitely highlighted it that we needed to see Buckles have 25 carries or more a game. And they put the stamp right on his butt and gave him 33 carries.
No,
But
but
that
I don't know.
great.
It was. Kyle, I don't know what it is. I just feel like West Carroll's on a little bit of a mission here. And
They
again,
got something
I
to
don't know if
prove.
I would. Yeah, I don't know if I would pick them next week. I haven't looked ahead to who I'd pick next week yet. Assuming they get by West Carroll here and South Fork gets by Galva. But we can talk about that next week. But I just feel like these kids, they know what's out there. They know. They've watched. They listened to my Spotlight I8FA enough. They'd watched this enough to know, that they haven't gotten to that next level yet where they've beaten an Amboy or a Polo or a Milledgeville. So.
Well, in all reality, who has?
Right. That's true. So we'll just kind of wait and see how this plays out. But I think the Thunder are going to be on a mission in these playoffs here, and definitely going to be a tough out.
Yeah, they like you said, they got the makeup to be able to do that, and that makes them dangerous, right?
Oh, for sure.
They're very dangerous. So West Carroll enters this game as 24-point favorite. So like you said, might not be the 42-0 game we saw in week 1. But one thing still stands true. West Carroll has not given up a lot of points this year when they have not played a Polo or a Milledgeville.
Very true. Like their defense here in this one, for sure.
The big thing here is this could be a trap game for them. They can't come in overconfident. They can't come in thinking that
Correct.
they already beat them 42-0.
Correct.
They got to come in to say this is a new season, new team, because let's be honest, their win last year against FCW, they squeaked that one out.
Yeah, they did. That was a classic for sure.
And then they got steamrolled by Polo the very next week.
Right.
They do have a lot to prove, but we've talked a lot
Yes, they
about
do.
we've talked about a lot about the Thunder this year, and that we definitely see they're rising, right?
Uh-huh.
They have a lot of juniors on this team as well, mixed in with a couple sophomores. Obviously, they do still have a couple seniors, but a lot of the guys that we're talking about on a more regular basis are juniors and seniors, but there's a good group that are still going to be
Mhm.
returning next year.
Oh, yeah, for
A-
sure.
And we already know what their JV schedule looks like, or JV team
Yeah.
looks like.
Right.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. West Carroll, my pick to win.
Yep. Same.
All right, let's take a look around the state. I'll pull up the bracket here, Joe, and
Okay.
we will take a look at that bracket. There she is. I did a couple modifications to it.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Not a whole lot, but just a couple slight changes.
Yep.
All right, so we've already discussed Milledgeville Meridian, and
Yep.
we both agree Milledgeville wins big.
Yep.
So the next one would be the 8 seed South Beloit. They're hosting the 9 seed Alden Hebron Olsha in a rematch of a game that South Beloit won 49-7 back in week 6.
Yep. You know, Kyle, I just feel so bad for the Giants here. They're just so banged up here. Um, I like South Beloit in this one. They got a lot of weapons on offense, as we've talked about. They've struggled, though, the last 2 weeks to stop the likes of Poe and West Carroll. But I don't think Alden Hebron Olsha has, the weapons that those two teams have, especially with Linneman being out for the season, their sophomore stud running back. Again, small school football injuries happen. Just unfortunate for the Giants. Bad timing here. I like South Beloit. I see the projection South Beloit by 15. I got to think it'll be at least that, Kyle. Now, if you're Milledgeville, you're cheering for Alden Hebron Olsha in this one, Kyle, without a doubt, because
Oh, yeah.
you want to go to Alden Hebron for that second round game if you're Milledgeville, and then you pretty much guarantee yourself that. Well, you would guarantee yourself that home game. Almost a guarantee a home game in that semifinal then. So this is a big game here, South Beloit and Alden Hebron. But I'm picking the Sobos in this one.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, South Beloit favored by 15 points. I, too, like South Beloit in this game. I don't know if it'll be like the 42-point separation the first time around was. I don't think South Beloit's playing at the same level that they were mid-season either.
Correct. I agree.
So this could be a good get-back game for South Beloit, but they're still my pick to win as the favorite. And
Right.
like you said, it's unfortunate the adversity Alden Hebron Olsha's going up against. Maybe they might find a struck of luck of magic here. Who knows? But yeah, South Beloit's definitely the favorite in my book here. All right. Number 4, Pawnee is going to play host to FCW. The 13 seed Pawnee's 8-1, FCW 6-3. We've talked a lot about FCW this year because, like we've stated, their record doesn't necessarily reflect how tough of a team they've been, especially when they've had to play the likes of Polo and Amboy. But then they
Right.
did have that hiccup loss against West Central, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But they have to go on the road down to Pawnee and play a team that was in the semifinals a season ago.
Yeah, so of course Pawnee, Caden Ward, Kyle, the quarterback, I believe he can become the all-time leading passer in I8F history in this game. I think he's 10 yards off or something like that.
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
Yes.
So Ward,
I gotta
obviously
get all
Pawnee's
that information put together yet, but yes,
yeah,
that is correct.
yeah, Pawnee's obviously got a lot bigger fish to fry than that though in this game. They want to advance, obviously. It Kyle, this is one of those this is weird to me because on one side of me says I like Pawnee big in this one. Okay. But there's that part of me that says, okay, if someone's asking me to pick a first round upset, because you don't obviously in the 8-man plays, you don't see a lot of places where there could be a first round upset, right?
Correct.
So you're going to this, you kind of get drawn to this game as a possibility. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say, like
Yes.
you
No,
see both sides of this. What?
I agree. I mean, it's one of the things that I've talked about heavily this year is while the South Division has done a great job of lifting themselves up, at the same token, they're still playing against themselves in the East Division, which
Right,
have yet to truly prove themselves in playoff games on a regular
right,
basis. I mean, Pawnee, yes, they made a trip to the semifinals, but once they played a team from up north, they got rocked hard. And
right.
and I, and I felt last year's team was more formidable than this year's team.
Yeah, yeah. And of course Flanagan, Cornell Woodland, they're gonna uh, ride one of their main guys, Logan Ruddy. He's star of the year's receiver. He's been playing some running back. It sounds like here lately. So he's going to get a lot of touches in this game. Of course, the quarterback, Bresden Simons, he'll throw the ball some. Um, and then, like I talked about Pawnee, you got Caden Ward back from last year's team, Dakota Coyne, a few other guys. They got a nice mix of sophomores and juniors in. I'm picking Pawnee in this one, Kyle. I'm going to say maybe by a couple of scores, but I think Flanagan and Cornell Woodland is definitely going to hang around for a good 3/4 of this ball game.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different look. So,
Okay.
you know, you mentioned Dakota Coyne. We talked about Caden Ward. Obviously, Jaden Adamako has done great things
Yep.
for Pawnee over the years. Really is their leading rusher right now. I don't have all their stats updated yet. Coach Tally has sent me those stats. I still got to get them plugged in as of filming this show right now. But Lucas Size and Gavin Greer have also been big impact players in that receiving game for Pawnee this season.
Right.
With that, however, we saw FCW play to a 20-point game against Polo at a
Yep.
time when Polo was coming off of a big win. And I felt like Polo would have been better. And I remember having that conversation with you,
Yep.
what your thoughts were on FCW. And you said that they were much better than what the game had played out.
Well, and the other thing, Kyle, that was their first game of the season. Remember, they had that bye in week 1.
Oh,
So
that's,
you're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
play you're going to play a team of Keller or Polo in your first game, and Polo's already played a game.
Yeah,
So I
why did I
mean,
think that was a
you
week
know,
4 game? You're right. That was week 2.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
I mean,
But so let's fast forward though. So a couple weeks later, they did play Amboy, and that game was close in the first half. Amboy had to
right,
put it on in the second half to pull away. Regardless, they lost both games by like 3 touchdowns.
yeah,
And I think that's why Pawnee is listed as just a 7-point favorite here. For the fact that I think this game is a more even trajected game than what people think of a 13
yeah.
and
I mean,
4 seed.
I was gonna say for a 4-13 matchup, usually those are you can just book those as running clocks in the I8FA playoffs, but this is not going to be that. I don't think so.
I got
Um,
I got Pawnee winning, but I think it's gonna
yep.
be less than 2 touchdowns.
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying 2 scores here, but, again, it's I think it's gonna be a dogfight most of the way for sure. But
Yeah.
I think
I
Pawnee's gonna rely you're gonna rely on the all-time leading passer, throughout these playoffs in I8FA as far as he can take you,
Yep.
so we'll see what happens.
I think it's one of the 2 most intriguing games in the first round.
Correct. Yeah, this would be game number 2 as far as intrigue on my list, without a
Yep.
doubt.
So let's go to the other side of the bracket since we've already talked about Amboy MCP. We're going to take a look at the 2 seed South Fork as they play host to the 15 seed Galva. Galva entering at 5-4, South Fork 9-0. Obviously, a great storyline here for Galva. They've done some great
Right.
things to get where they're at, but South Fork has basically run the gauntlet, so to speak, of the South and East divisions. They hammered St.
Yes.
Anne. They beat Metro East Lutheran. They pounded Pawnee, and they have one of the leading rushers in the state on their team by the likes of George Bailey.
Yeah, I mean, Bailey, 1,807 yards and 34 touchdowns, Kyle. I mean, that's right off there with some of the best regular seasons we've seen in the short history of the I8FA, you know?
It is.
That's Gunnar Lobdell numbers, that's Brock Salto numbers, that's Caden Drosty numbers. I
Yeah,
mean,
Justin's a little
he's
more.
on that list, Kyle. He is on that list.
Yes, he
So,
is. I
and
think
again,
Drosky and Leighton Miller both ran for over 3,000 yards that one year.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Miller, that's right. Forgot about him. Um, but again, Kyle, I think South Fork, heading into these playoffs, I just keep going back to the fact that this is just such a senior laden team, Kyle. All
It
these
is, and
guys
that
have been in the playoffs already. Now, granted, they haven't been able to do too much, but you just know how hungry these seniors are for this South Fork team, you know? Um, it kind of reminds you a little bit of Milledgeville, very senior laden team for the most part. They know their fans know this is kind of the team they've been waiting for, you know. Again, Galva, great story. 0-9 the last 2 seasons, now 5-4, they're in the playoffs. Great story, but I really like South Fork in this one, especially the way they've been playing.
so here's a
Look
great
for
storyline.
Yeah,
So on the other side of the bracket, we've already picked Pawnee and Amboy both to win their first round games.
okay,
If that plays out, it's Amboy at Pawnee in the quarterfinals.
right,
This one, South Fork is projected to win by 24 points. Or they're the
yeah,
favorite by 24 points, I mean. They should win this game. And we've already
right.
projected West Carroll to beat West Central. If that plays out, West Carroll has to go to South Fork at the same time Amboy has to go to Pawnee. Wouldn't it be awesome if they could have those games
Oh,
staggered so we could pick up both games since they're only 10 miles apart from each other?
well, that's possible, Kyle, because South Fork this week, the game with Galva is 6 o'clock Saturday night. Now, I don't know if there's a reason behind that or if that's just what they picked, but maybe South Fork wants to play under the lights. So, it's
I
not
hope that's
impossible
the
there, Mr.
case.
Kampmeyer.
I
It's
hope
not
that's the case.
impossible.
Because if that were to be the
You are
case,
hitting the
you
road, aren't you?
you might see me back down in Pawnee and Kincaid for the second year in a row in the quarterfinals and picking up
Oh
2
man.
games simultaneously.
Yeah.
That would be a ton of
Yeah,
fun.
that would be great, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes, for sure.
No, but as I said, Kyle, I think South Fork's on a mission here. Senior led team. Can run the ball as we've talked about, run teams win in November. So you like South Fork from that aspect. Again, Galva. And I don't think, Kyle, that Galva's gonna come in with the attitude of, oh, we're just happy to be here. Coach Anderson, he's got these kids a tough mindset. Like they're not going to go in there just a happy to be their mindset. They're going in there and they're going to play hard. They're going to play till the end, play to the whistle.
Well,
Um,
that's just it. Galva's been in the playoff mindset for the past couple weeks because
Right.
Let's be honest. All it
Exactly.
took was one hiccup somewhere over the past 3 weeks, and they're not in the playoffs. We're not talking about
Right.
Galva.
Exactly. For sure. So
We'd be talking about
they've
Unity
had that
Christian right
playoff mindset. Yeah, that's a great point by you, Kyle. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, they were 2-4, I believe. So
Yeah.
now they're 5-4 and they're in the playoffs. So I like South Fork big in this one. Again, George Bailey, that ground game. And yeah, the number 2 seed is going to hold serve here and win this one big. I think this gets to a running clock.
Yeah, I could see that happening as well. All right, we've already talked about Polo Hiawatha, so we'll drop down to the 6th seed St. Anne. Enters at 8-1. They got to play the host, the 11th seed Metro East Lutheran, who is 7-2. This is the other most intriguing game of round 1 here.
I mean, without a doubt, Kyle. I mean, I can't remember in the short history of I8FA playoffs a game that has this much intrigue in round 1. Maybe that Amboy's first year in 8-man when they went up to Aquin. I was kind of had my eye on that game as a possible good game. But other than that, Kyle, it's hard to remember a game where in the first round where you're like, man, this game is going to be a classic. Like, this could go either way. No score really surprise you here one way or the other. Both these teams got senior quarterbacks, Grant Pomerantz for St. Anne and Abe Oberhauser for Metro East. Of course, Oberhauser, he's got 1,280 yards rushing and almost 1,000 yards passing, total of 34 touchdowns. And of course, Pomerantz, he can run it or pass it as well. Boy, Kyle, this is tough. I mean, here's the other thing. Metro East, and again, you can't control who's on your schedule, but they played a much tougher schedule than St. Anne has.
Yeah,
So Metro
no
East, I
doubt
feel
about
a little
that.
bit more battle tested,
Oberhauser also has over 3,200 passing yards in his career, which
Yeah.
puts him number 4 all-time in I8FA history. Getting ready to pass Aiden Wolf of Aquin.
Okay.
And your guy Dirk Newcomb's right up there too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Kyle, I this is tough one. I feel like St. Anne's defense has been a little bit better, but again, the competition maybe hasn't been quite as good. So, you just wonder if Metro East played St. Anne's schedule, what their defense would look like as well, if that makes sense.
No, it does. But here's one of the things I do find intriguing about St. Anne is that while they got smoked by South Fork, they were very physical, more physical than
Yeah.
they were a season ago. And
Right.
and we've talked about it at different times throughout the course of the season as well. St. Anne has great team speed.
Yes, they do.
So if they can play sound fundamental defense and not chase plays, but bring the hammer stick and
Yep.
lay the wood to some of these guys and be responsible on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to set themselves up with opportunities. Like you said, Quentin Thompson's not Chris Link, but Quentin Thompson has done a great job as far as being able to at least supply rushing offense for St. Anne. And then Grant Pomerantz at QB has been able to connect with Matthew Langelier a lot. And
Right.
I feel that while this is a great opportunity for both of these teams, I'm not surprised if either team comes away with the win. St.
Right.
Anne is a 4-point favorite in this game. I'm going to pick St. Anne to win this game, but
Yeah.
I am not going to be surprised if we see Metro East Lutheran win this game.
Kyle, this is one of those games where you've got to think it could come down to who makes more 2-point conversions. I mean, I think it's that close tightly contested. I really do.
I agree. No, I agree 100%.
And then again, Kai, you never want to look too far ahead here, but let's say Metro East pulls this off. That second round, you think West Carroll and Amboy would have to head south. Polo would have to head 4 hours south to Metro East for that second round game. So that'd be quite the bus trip for the Marcos there if Metro East pulls this off. But we'll talk more about that next week. But
that's a fun trip. Don't worry about it. You'll be all right. You'll be making that trip too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, you know, Kyle, we talked on your preview show on Saturday night. We talked to the coach from Metro East Lutheran, Coach Cook. He's very confident in his ball club, without a doubt.
Yeah.
He is confident. He even stated he thinks he's got the best offensive player in Oberhausen, the best defensive player in Landon Jefferson in the state. You know, so he's very confident. You know, he's got his team believing heading into these playoffs. You know,
yeah,
so
and I agree. I agree. I mean, Oberhauser definitely stands out.
Right.
Obviously, Landon Jefferson has done great things for this Knights team, both offensively and defensively. I don't know about the best defensive player in the state, but
No.
he's definitely a player to talk about as being one of the top players in the state.
Yeah, he's probably going to be in the All-State team based on his defense, possibly,
and rightfully so.
Right.
Rightfully so. But man, Oberhauser can do some things that you don't normally see out of quarterbacks. You know, he's not only does he have a good arm, but when he gets scrambling, he's got good speed, but he's very shifty, and he can make people miss in the open field. And, you know, that doesn't always get looked at. And, you know, you got to be able to have that elusiveness to find success, and Oberhauser can provide that.
Right. You know, Kyle, you remember too last year in the 2024 playoffs, Metro East was a 16 seed. They jumped on Pawnee right at the start of that game. I don't know if you remember that, but they put 14 quick points on Pawnee in that 16-1 matchup. You know,
I
and
do
they got
remember
most
that.
of those guys back. You know,
because
so
I was talking with Kai Luckert last year about that game, and they wanted a second chance at Pawnee because they felt like that they could do things differently against Pawnee. And of course, they got out the gates and were able to do some things, but it didn't hold up. And yeah, I agree. I think this is the game you got to put St. Anne on upset alert before the game kicks off. I really do. I'm still gonna.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm picking St. Anne to win, but yeah, this would be my upset alert game here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Metro East by a touchdown here. Metro East by 6 in this one, but again, St. Anne wins by a touchdown. You'd not be surprised either. This should be a great game. This is a 3:00 kickoff on Saturday, so I'm definitely gonna try to catch some of this one at some point after the polo game. This will be a fun one for sure.
Yeah, you'll have to keep me updated because I'm making a trip south. Imagine that. I'm going to Farmington and scooting over to Monmouth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up the Farmington EPC game and then the Monmouth Roseville Mantino game. So, yeah, we're getting out on the road in the first round already, bud.
Gotta love it.
If my trajectory plays out the way I have it picked currently, the top 8 seeds all move on into the second round, the quarterfinal round. So it'd be straight chalk going into the quarterfinals before we start to see some seed displacement possibilities.
Right.
And if it were to play out, our NUIC teams all have a shot at getting all of them into the semifinals.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle, you know, I've kind of touched on it already, but Amboy, Millersville, Pole, and West Carroll. Of course, West Carroll just in their second year. But those 4 teams combined in the first round of I8FA playoff games are 14-0. in their short I8FA history. Amboy 4-0, Milledgeville 4-0, Polo 5-0, West Carroll 1-0 in the first round. So, and all those teams at home, you got to like all their chances, obviously. I see that getting to 18-0 this week as far as from an NUIC standpoint here.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's going to be fun. Going to be fun. I love the playoffs.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
And I've already taken Friday the 21st of November off to head down to Monmouth, so already got that scheduled and planned. Unfortunately, I'll miss the semifinal games because I'll be in Minnesota that weekend for the Bears-Vikings game, which I'm excited about, but at the same time, I'll be missing the games in action live, but I'll be definitely tuned into those games. Because I should be able to have Saturday afternoon open. We also picked up Minnesota Wild Anaheim Ducks tickets too. So we're going two different sports, 2 different days. Yeah, we're making a trip out of it to Minnesota. Yeah, it's going to be like a mini vacation.
And I'll be down at Monmouth too, no matter who it is. We'll have that game on WLT Radio and streaming on WLTradio.com. We've done every state championship so far. We have no plans on stopping. So
we'll be sitting right next to you.
I'll get to announce my 6th straight I8FA state championship. So honored to be able to do that. So we were.
If you need a third color guy, I'm available.
I will. So keep you in mind for sure. So
there you go.
No, a lot to be determined though in the next 3 weeks, Kyle, before we get there. But it's going to be a fun ride. And again, I just going to say that state championship game at Monmouth on that Friday night, Kyle, usually the only game in the state. There might be like a 7A semifinal game or something going on, but it's usually the only game in the state of Illinois that night. I mean, it's just awesome.
Well, and that's just it. So I went back and looked. There we had over 14,000 views for last year's state championship game. It was the most watched I8FA state championship game to date.
Yeah.
Because I saw some people complaining that it's not on regular TV. And I stated that, Hewlett Public Pro with Dwayne Hewlett and his staff do an awesome job covering the state championship game. Likewise, they broadcast it live on YouTube, which most people stream TV anymore anyway. So the fact that I had over 14,000 views, you knew that more people than that were watching it. I guarantee you it was on in a bar in Milledgeville and Amboy somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And then that every coach in I8FA was tuned into it as well, if they weren't already there. But on top of that, there was over 3,000 people in attendance to a sold-out April Zorn Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
And
Kyle,
that
who was the? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But yeah,
I was going to say that doesn't include all the media that was sitting in the press box that night either.
Right. Who was the Division I coach that checked in on Dwayne's broadcast? Division I college football coach. You remember that last year?
I don't.
Somebody checked in or on one of the broadcasts, like how you can.
Yeah.
I'm not very technologically advanced here when it comes to these terms, but I want to say it was. I know it was a major Division I coach that was watching. I'm not saying he watched the whole game, but he was watching that game at some point and checked in on Dwayne's broadcast.
Maybe it was Bielema.
Well, I know. I mean, he might have too, but there was somebody else. It was from an outside Illinois. So Bielema might have actually. Now that you say that, but I know there's somebody else. But
hey,
some reason I'm thinking Hugh Freeze, I can't remember who it was.
It could have been, yeah.
Somebody checked it out. A major Division I college coach. So
before Hugh Freeze got the major college football, he was a high school football coach.
Yeah. So I mean, the attention this 8-man gets, and it's the only game in the state. It's a pretty cool thing for sure. So
Well, we were just having
Here,
the
see,
conversation this past weekend for the Packers game. Tucker Kraft played 9-man football,
yeah,
which that brought
yes,
up conversations of former Iowa standout and Minnesota Vikings linebacker Chad Greenway, who grew up playing 8-man football.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
there are pathways to get
Oh
to
yeah,
larger arenas through the 8-man game, believe it or not. I mean,
yep.
we've
They'll
talked
find you if
about
you're
it
good
in
enough.
yeah, and we've talked about it in depth. I think playing the 8-man game definitely shows you who your true athletes are because you have to be better at open field tackling in the 8-man game.
Right.
At the same time, you also have to be more elusive on the outside edge in the 8-man game.
Yep. For
So
sure.
I think that's what has really drawn me to the 8-man game is just the fact that I mean, don't get me wrong, I love normal, regular 11-man football, but the 8-man
Right.
game has a lot of intense moments with a lot of great action, a lot of great athletes that provides a lot of fun for these games and these teams that play it.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And
I can't wait, Kyle. This is going to be fun playoffs. Um, and let's be honest, there's probably going to be some games in this first round that get out of hand. There's going to be some running clocks, you know. And
oh yeah,
you
there always is.
can't guarantee there won't be in the second round, but you get past this first round, you get the quarterfinals. There's destined to be some great games, some solid matchups the rest of the way out, without a
We
doubt.
get to the
So it's gonna
final 8. We get to the final 8. I can guarantee you the final 8 are going to be 8 of our top 10 ranked teams that we've had in the top 10 all year long.
yeah. Yeah, it's looking that way, isn't it?
Just stating that.
Yeah. It almost makes us look like we knew what we were talking about way back in August on our preview show.
We kind of did. Just people didn't want to believe it at the time. They
Well,
had to see it
I'll
play
admit,
out.
we missed out on a few teams, or at least I did. Ridgewood and Martinsville. They took a hard fall.
Yes, for
I
sure. Obviously,
saw the
Ridgewood
fall coming
was
from St. Thomas More. I saw that fall coming for whatever reason. No disrespect, but Ridgewood definitely was a surprise. And Martinsville, obviously, it's a surprise, but yet when you look at their enrollment, 87 kids, you're going to have down years. You can't consistently, you know, sustain their success with that enrollment,
no.
Uh, so I did miss a few teams. I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about a few teams,
Yeah, I mean,
but
don't I had Ridgewood in the playoffs at one point.
yeah,
Um, I don't think I had Martinsville in the playoffs, but they definitely showed up in our state rankings early in the season.
right, right,
But you can only go off of information you know of at that time. Obviously, West
exactly,
Central made it back into the state rankings after not being in it to start the year.
yep,
Um, Either way, yeah, it's been a fun year. We've got new teams in these playoffs with Galva and Meridian, which has
yep,
been a lot of fun. And then you got a lot of your regular teams that are sitting here again. You know, I mean, you take a look. Galva and Meridian are the only two new teams to the playoff field.
right,
I mean,
yep,
Hiawatha was not in the playoff field a season ago, but they've been in it the 3 seasons prior to that.
right,
So,
right,
yes, they returned back this year, but it's not like they're not typically in the playoffs. They've been in it most of the time.
yep.
Yeah, Alden Hebron,
And
obviously they weren't in the playoffs last year. They're back in it, but they've been in it before as well.
well, and Kyle, you again with these South teams, South Fork and Pawnee and Metro East,
They've stood out,
from that South division, you feel like those teams maybe got a little chip on their shoulder, you know,
and
uh,
they should.
after what Amboy did to Pawnee last year in the semis. South Fork has them on the first round. You know, these teams know. Let's be honest. We talked about a little bit on your show Saturday night. These teams know. You know, the North kind of reigns supreme in 8-man football. Uh, but boy, it only takes 1 or 2 wins to change that, Kyle, for a year. If you're one of these South teams.
That it does. That it does. I think one of the cool things is that we'll have probably a high probability of seeing at least one team from every division into the quarterfinals too.
Yeah, and Kyle, it's very, very interesting. If you look at, let's say Metro East pulls that upset on St. Anne, if you want to call that an upset.
That would be the time
Lose.
that we would not see a team from every division in the
But let's say that does happen. It's just very interesting how the bracket shapes up then. Polo versus Metro East, South Fork versus West Carroll, Pawnee versus Amboy. Those three teams from the South that we've been talking about all year long would each be playing an NUIC team, Kyle. In that second round, you got the smile. You got the Kampmier smirk on your face.
They would all get their opportunity to prove it, right?
Yeah, they sure would. How fun would that be?
I mean, either way it plays out. Okay, let's say Metro East Lutheran does lose to St. Anne.
Right. Even St. Anne, they they want to prove stuff too.
They do. But they too would have to go through an NUIC team.
Right.
So you could still speak to it that if St. Anne hypothetically could not get past one after they beat Metro East Lutheran, what's to say that Metro East Lutheran could? Likewise, to your note, if Metro East Lutheran get by St. Anne, now they have that opportunity to prove it themselves.
Yep. And it's going to be fun, Kyle.
And like you said, it gives us some stakes in the game here.
For sure. I can't wait, Kyle. Let's fast forward to Saturday and then the next Saturday.
Saturday night.
Let's fast forward to Saturday to the games and to the show next week.
Yeah.
Because that'll be fun, breaking down those 4 quarterfinal games. That'll be a blast.
It will be. So, get out to those games and support your teams. It's going to be a lot of fun. The playoffs are here. The best 4 weeks of the season are here for the 8-man side of things. The road to Monmouth is well on its way now. The 16-team fields are here. The games are set. The lights come on. It's showtime. Let's see what we got. Cheer for your teams. As always, root for the NUIC. We'll see you next week.